For 10 whole years, the person I loved most in my life, the one I raised with such care, violated me every single day. And I lay there, paralyzed, unable even to lift an arm to defend myself. That person was my own son, tormenting me for a full 10 years. The most terrifying thing was that he kept pretending to care about me. This sounds like something out of a horror movie, but it happened in Savannah, Georgia, in the very home where I raised him, a home I once thought was filled with kindness. Before I continue this heavy story, please tell me your names and where to listen in the comments. I want to know which brave people are willing to hear the naked truth of life. Because the story I'm about to tell will touch you in ways you never expected, but I must tell it. I know there are other women going through what I went through, and perhaps my courage can give them strength. Every word I say is true, every detail actually happened. By the end, you will understand why it took me so long to dare to tell all this. I used to work in a textile factory in Savannah, sewing all day long, working hard to earn money and raising my son alone. The factory was in an industrial area, a big, noisy building where hundreds of women hunched over their sewing machines all day, making clothes they could never afford. Little Junior's father ran away after he found out I was pregnant, saying he didn't want to take responsibility, that he was too young to be a father. He came from a good family and was handsome. He had me wrapped around his little finger at first, but once things got serious, he vanished without a trace. I was only 19 when I gave birth to Junior, but I was determined to raise him with all my love and give him everything I never had in my childhood. My mother died when I was young, and my father was a heartless man who never showed affection. I promised myself that my son would be different. He would grow up in love and have all the opportunities one had ever dreamed of. Looking back now, perhaps it was this excessive love that ultimately spoiled him, making him feel that he could do whatever he wanted to me. I toiled like a beast of burden in that factory for over 20 years. Every morning I'd get up at 5 a.m., make breakfast, prepare lunch for little Junior to heat up when he got home from school, then rush to catch 2 buses and have to be at work before 7 a.m. The factory was hot and stuffy, filled with fabric dust and the smell of chemicals. I spent the whole day hunched over the sewing machine, repeating the same actions thousands of times, until my back ached, my eyes were dry, and my fingers were stiff. I'd get home at 6 p.m., completely exhausted, but I still had to cook, help Junior with his homework, do laundry, and clean the house to prepare for the next day. These days broke me to the bone, but the thought of my son's future kept me going. On weekends when I wasn't doing laundry or cleaning, I'd take him to the park, buy him ice cream, and try my best to give him a childhood I never had. I saved every penny to buy him school supplies, decent clothes, and immediately replaced his shoes when they got too small. Little Junior seemed very caring as a child, at least that's what I thought back then. He would help me with chores, sweep the yard, take out the trash, and tell me he loved me and would take care of me when he grew up. These words gave me the motivation to work hard every day. I dreamed that he would graduate, find a good job, and then we could live a stable life. I never expected that a demon was slowly growing in the heart of this child I had raised with all my might. All my love for him was distorted by him in a morbid way. At school, Junior's grades were average, not outstanding, but he didn't cause any trouble for the teachers either. He was quiet, obedient, and never delayed with his homework. Every time I went to parent-teacher conferences and communicated with the teachers, I always heard, "He is very polite and sensible, and no one ever complained about him." I thought I was doing a good job of educating him, and everything was on the right track. But when he turned 18, I started to notice his behavior became strange. First, the way he looked at me changed completely, especially when I was changing clothes or had just finished showering. He would stare at me intently, and that gaze made me very uncomfortable, but I tried to ignore it. Sometimes when I was in the bedroom or bathroom, I felt like someone was watching me, but when I went to check, he was playing somewhere in the distance. I thought I was just overthinking it, that I was just being paranoid because I was too tired from work. He also became increasingly clingy, and the intimacy he showed was nothing like what you'd expect between a mother and son. He always wanted to hold me, and his kisses on the cheek lasted much longer than before. He was always finding excuses to lean on me and touch me. When I was cooking in the kitchen, he would hug me from behind, pressing his body tightly against mine, It felt very strange. When I objected, he would laugh and say it was just an expression of affection. Couldn't I even hug my own mother? One time, he said I was too tired from work and wanted to give me a massage. I thought it was a son's way of showing filial piety, so I agreed. But his massage was very strange. It should have started from my shoulders, but it slowly slid down to my back, my sides, and even near my chest. I pointed out that it was wrong, but he just laughed and said I was making a fuss over nothing, that he just wanted to help me relieve fatigue, and that I was the one who misunderstood. Things gradually worsened, in a subtle and gradual way, taking me a long time to understand what was happening. He started coming into my room without knocking, always with various excuses, asking about school, borrowing things from me, talking about work. But I noticed his eyes were always glued to me, a look that was definitely not between a mother and son. When I was in my pajamas, he would deliberately linger, making small talk just to get a few more glances. When I mentioned his strange behavior, he would get angry, saying I had dirty thoughts, that I just wanted to chat, and that I had misunderstood him. He also said I was overworked and that my paranoia stemmed from needing more rest. He made me feel guilty for doubting him, making me feel like I was making things up. One night, he had a few drinks and wanted to sleep in my bed. He said he had a nightmare and was very scared, unable to sleep alone. I felt sorry for him and let him lie down, thinking it was just temporary and he would go back to his room the next day. But in the middle of the night, I felt him moving, his body pressed tightly against mine, his hands on my waist and legs. I woke up with a start and confronted him, but he pretended to be fast asleep. The next morning at breakfast, I brought it up, and he said I was dreaming, that it never happened, and that I was confusing dreams with reality. He also said that people who work hard are prone to having vivid nightmares and told me to take care of myself. He made me start to doubt my own memory and my own senses. I began to fear my son, yet at the same time, I felt guilty for having these thoughts. After all, he was the child I had raised with all my love and sacrifice. How could I suspect he would do something so terrible? How could I have imagined that the son I had raised with my own hands would harbor impure thoughts about me? I tried to convince myself that I was overthinking, that the heavy workload was driving me crazy, that I was making things up. I started avoiding being home alone with him, always finding something to do when he was around. I started locking the bedroom door, something I had never done before. I changed my showering habits, changing my clothes in the bathroom before coming out. But all of this only made me more anxious, because I couldn't understand why I was taking these precautions against my son. Then, that day came, completely changing my life and dividing it into before and after. It was Monday morning, March 15th, 1998. The day began like any other. I got up at 5 a.m., made breakfast, prepared lunch, and got ready for work. Little Junior was still asleep when I left. It was a warm summer morning, a gentle breeze blowing. I arrived at the factory on time, clocked in, and sat down at the sewing machine to start working. I was rushing to finish a batch of women's clothing, which had to be delivered before lunch. I remember being focused on my work when suddenly a sharp pain shot through my head, like someone had hit the back of my neck with a hammer. The pain was so intense that my vision blurred instantly, and I felt the floor spinning. The world spun around me. I tried to grab the machine control panel, but I couldn't. The last thing I remember was falling off the chair, hearing the other machines stop, and women screaming and running towards me. When I woke up, I was in the hospital, covered in various medical equipment. The doctor explained that I had suffered a stroke, a brain hemorrhage. He said it was rare for someone so young to have a stroke. It usually happens to older people, mainly due to excessive work and life stress. The left side of my body was completely numb, and my left arm and leg were unable to move normally. From that moment on, my life became a complete hell. I needed help with everything: bathing, dressing, using the toilet, eating. I couldn't do anything without assistance. Junior, then 22, offered to take care of me. He said he would give up everything to care for me wholeheartedly because I had been taking care of him my whole life. At that time, I was deeply moved by his filial piety. For the first few days after he came home, everything was fine. He helped me with my daily life, took me to the toilet, fed me, and bathed me. I was very grateful, thinking I had such a considerate son. But soon, things changed. First, he said he couldn't let anyone else take care of me, only he knew how to take good care of me. He sent away Aunt Martha, whom the social worker had arranged to help me. Aunt Martha was in her 50s, very kind, and came 3 times a week to help me bathe and do basic physical therapy. She had experience caring for stroke patients, knew how to deal with paralysis, and was gentle and respectful. But little Junior always found fault with her, saying she was careless, unprofessional, and hurt me during rehabilitation exercises. He made up a whole bunch of excuses to complain, and in the end, the poor aunt had to resign. From then on, he kept saying I was very dirty and needed longer baths. He insisted on thoroughly cleaning me because no one would be as meticulous as him. Aunt Martha used to bathe me in just 10 minutes, but he would take over an hour. He said paralyzed people harbor unimaginable grime, and if not thoroughly cleaned, it could lead to serious infections or even death. His hands lingered longer and longer on certain parts of my body, especially my chest and genitals, always using deep cleaning as an excuse. I objected, saying it wasn't necessary to bathe so long and so carefully, but he insisted that was how it should be, that people who can't move normally need more meticulous cleaning, and that I didn't understand medical care. He said he had researched hygiene for bedridden patients online, and that professional websites recommended meticulous cleaning, and that I should be grateful for his patience. I tried to argue with him, but he always had a ready-made answer, finding a medical justification for every disgusting thing he did. I slowly realized something was wrong. His touching had nothing to do with hygiene, those hands that lingered, those touches that disgusted and terrified me. He would circle my chest with his hand, saying he was checking for nodules, and that paralyzed women have poor blood circulation and a higher risk of cancer. He would touch my private parts with his fingers, even inserting them, saying he was cleaning secretions and checking for infections. But I was completely dependent on him, unable even to get out of bed on my own. What could I do? My left side was completely immobile. I didn't even have the strength to push him away with my right hand. I felt trapped inside my own body, watching and feeling all of this, powerless to resist. That helplessness was so desperate that it drove me to panic, but screaming was useless. No one would hear me. The situation worsened, escalating step by step, until I even began to doubt my own sanity. He started controlling every aspect of my life, who I could see, what medication I could take, what food I could eat, what TV programs I could watch. He said it was all for my own good, that only he knew best what I needed, and that as my primary caregiver, he had the right to make all decisions related to my health. He completely isolated us from the outside world. Even neighbors couldn't come to see me. If someone knocked on the door, he would respond by saying I was sleeping, feeling unwell, or that the doctor had advised absolute rest. He always managed to come up with different excuses to get rid of people. Eventually, no one came anymore, and everyone assumed I truly needed rest to recover. Meanwhile, the abuse intensified day by day, reaching a level I couldn't even bear to imagine. However, before I get to the end of this horrific story, I have to start from where I began. Otherwise, you won't understand how a son could become such a monster, how someone you raised with all your love could become so cruel. After I was discharged from the hospital, I became completely dependent on him, and that's when the real nightmare began. What I thought was filial piety was actually the most disgusting ordeal a mother could endure. It seemed he had been waiting for this opportunity for years. My paralysis seemed to be exactly what he had always wanted. In the first few weeks after I returned home, I was still adjusting to life without normal mobility. He said he would check me up every day to prevent bed sores from developing due to prolonged bed rest. He said he had researched bedridden patient care online and that improper care could lead to terrible wounds. He even printed out some horrific photos of bedsore infections to show me, saying that if I didn't let him take care of me properly, I would end up like that too. I believed him. After all, he was my son, my only family in the world. Why should I doubt him? He seemed so caring and devoted, and his tone was firm and authoritative when he spoke of the medical risks. But these checks took longer and longer, and his hands began to touch places that had nothing to do with preventing bed sores. He would examine every inch of my skin, saying that bed sores could appear anywhere. He also said my chest looked a little swollen and needed massage to promote blood circulation, adding that professional websites said women who were bedridden for long periods were prone to problems with blood circulation in their chests, and massage was very important. His hands lingered there for a long time, squeezing and rubbing, a sensation that made my stomach churn, filled with nausea, fear, and confusion. I told him it hurt a lot, and I didn't like it, but he said it's normal at first, you'll get used to it, and it's even good for your health. He also said I couldn't be so selfish. He was sacrificing his time to take care of me, and I had to cooperate with the treatment to recover. He said it so confidently that I started to doubt my own feelings and thought maybe I was just overthinking things. The first real, serious abuse happened one Thursday afternoon while I was showering. He said my genitals were too dirty and needed to be thoroughly cleaned, otherwise I would get a serious urinary tract infection and even die. He started touching me in a way that had nothing to do with hygiene, even sticking his fingers inside, saying that he was cleaning the dirt that I couldn't clean myself because I was paralyzed. I tried to close my legs, using all the strength in my right side to protect myself, but he held me tightly, saying in that fake, gentle tone, "Mom, relax, I'm your son. There's nothing wrong with that. When I was little, you bathed me every day, wiped my bottom, and taught me hygiene. Now it's my turn to take care of you." This comparison was so absurd, so disgusting, but he said it so matter-of-factly. At that moment, I even began to wonder if I was overreacting. From then on, bathing became true torture, a terrifying ordeal I knew would happen every day, yet was powerless to escape. He would spend over an hour cleaning me, always using disgusting excuses about hygiene and health. He said paralyzed women needed special care, that I didn't understand medicine, that he had researched everything online and knew what he was doing. And I could only lie there, unable to move normally, completely dependent on him, with no way to resist or escape. The despair I felt was indescribable, a mixture of fear, disgust, and helplessness. Later, he invented so-called medical massage, still using those high-sounding excuses. He said he had to massage my stomach every day to help with bowel movements, and that paralyzed people are prone to constipation, which only abdominal massage could solve. Otherwise, they might die from intestinal obstruction. But his massage was very wrong. He clearly started from my stomach, but kept touching downwards until he reached places completely unrelated to the intestines. When I complained, he would get angry and shout, "Mom, do you want to recover or die? Do you want to die from infection? I'm risking my life to save you, and you're still not happy." Psychological control is more terrifying than physical abuse. He repeated those words every day like a mantra, crushing my spirit. "Mom, you depend on me for everything. If I'm gone, who will take care of you? Who will feed you, take you to the toilet, give you your medicine? Who will have the patience to care for a disabled person?" He said these things while doing those indecent things to me, as if it were the most normal thing in the world, as if I should be grateful for his sacrifice. He said I was a burden to everyone else, and only he had the patience to care for a disabled person like me. If he abandoned me, I would only rot in that awful nursing home, and no one would care about me. He portrayed my situation so tragically that even though I knew what he was doing to me was wrong, I was still afraid of losing him. It was a morbid cycle of dependence and fear. I tried to resist, to complain loudly, or to push him with my still-functioning hand, and he would respond with those subtle yet effective threats. He would say in that calm yet cold tone, "Mom, do you think anyone would believe a disabled person and not me? The neighbors around here, the whole city, everyone knows I'm the good son who gave up everything to take care of his sick mother. If you dare to make up lies and slander me, they'll just think you've gone crazy after your stroke and are hallucinating." These words cut me like knives because I knew he was right, who would believe me and not him. He began to control every detail of my life, every daily habit. He no longer allowed anyone into the house, not even the neighbors who occasionally came to visit. When Mrs. Johnson next door knocked on the door to ask how I was doing, he told her that I was sleeping because I had taken a strong medication, and the doctor had advised absolute rest, saying that visits would agitate me and affect my recovery. That kind lady had no choice but to leave worriedly, thinking that by not disturbing me, she was doing me a favor. He told everyone that I was very weak and needed absolute rest, and that visits would affect my recovery. He completely isolated us from the outside world. I could not see anyone else except him. Later, his threats became increasingly explicit. He said if I dared to tell anyone, he would send me to a nursing home and claim that I had developed dementia after a stroke. He said he knew people in the nursing home and that I would slowly rot there, be abused by strangers, eat terrible food, and no one would stand up for me. He described that kind of life as incredibly terrifying, and the thought of it terrified me. Then, he did the most horrible thing to me that I will never forget. He said I hadn't relaxed for too long, which was bad for any woman's health, especially for a disabled person. He also said he had researched it and doctors recommended that I do special exercises in my condition. When I realized what he was going to do, I tried to scream, but he covered my mouth and said, "It's no use, Mom. No one will hear you. Even if they did, they'd just think you're screaming because of the pain from paralysis." From that day on, my life became a living hell. He devised a horrific schedule. Mornings were for nauseatingly touching me during bath time, afternoons for his fabricated, indecent physical therapy, and evenings for the agonizing, special care that drove me to the brink of madness. He used health and medicine as excuses for everything, as if he were helping me. Because of my paralysis, I needed diaper changes, and he would spend a long time cleaning me while doing so, constantly touching places he shouldn't, claiming it was to keep me clean and healthy and prevent infection. He said he would never allow me to die from an infection because he loved me too much. The worst part was that he did all this while saying, "I love you." He would say, "Mom, I'm doing this because I love you. You're the most important woman in my life. I can't live without you." He conflated his declarations of love with his disgusting actions, as if it were perfectly natural. I simply cannot understand how someone can say, "I love you," while doing such things. He also started giving me medications that the doctor hadn't prescribed. He said they were special vitamins he'd bought to make me stronger. But I suspect those medications were just making me more drowsy and less able to resist. After taking those vitamins, I would become weaker and more confused, and even if he assaulted me, I wouldn't have the strength to scream. The first full sexual assault happened on a night I'll never forget. After midnight, he came into my room drunk and crying, saying he'd been taking care of me so much that he hadn't had time to find a girlfriend, and no woman wanted to be with him. He said it was all my fault, that I had an obligation to help him. What happened next was horrific. Even now, I still wake up screaming from nightmares. After that night, he said we had a special relationship, that I was more than just a mother to him, but also a partner. He said no one could know about it because others wouldn't understand this true love. He said our relationship was God's arrangement, that fate had paralyzed me so we could be closer. His madness had no limits. Honestly, do you think a mother has an obligation to forgive her son no matter what he does? I have a very controversial opinion on this. Tell me your thoughts in the comments section, because what I'm about to tell you about the past few years will make you understand why I think this way. From that terrible night, this horrific daily routine continued year after year. Every dawn was another day of torture, and every day I prayed to God to take me away from this pain as soon as possible. Junior turned my life into a prison. I was a prisoner trapped in my own body, and he was the cruelest jailer. Without exception, he repeated those abusive acts, always using those disgusting excuses of care and hygiene. Every morning when he wakes me up for breakfast, he starts touching me inappropriately, saying he's checking if I slept well and if I have any skin wounds. But those so-called checks are all acts of cruelty disguised as medical care. Every evening during my bath time, he spends more than 2 hours cleaning me, saying that disabled people need extra hygiene care, otherwise my body will rot from infection. But I know this isn't cleaning at all. It's just his way of satisfying his morbid desires, treating my body like a doll. I try to resist, but my left arm won't obey me, my left leg is completely immobile, and I even need him to help me go to the toilet. His fabricated physical therapy was another nightmare. He claimed he had learned rehabilitation training online to prevent me from completely losing my mobility. But his training involved touching me everywhere and forcing me to do movements that had nothing to do with stroke rehabilitation. He manipulated my body at will, saying it was all for my own good, and that if he didn't do it, I would be paralyzed for life. Nighttime was the worst. He said I needed special relaxation to sleep well, that women with neurological problems needed to relieve stress, or they might have another stroke. Then he would do things that made me want to vomit just thinking about them. I tried to pretend to be asleep, but he would say, "Stop pretending, Mom, I know you're awake." I tried everything to get help. I tried to signal with my eyes when neighbors passed by or looked into the window. I tried to twist my head to express despair, but he was always there beside me, in control of everything. If he noticed I was trying to get attention, he would shout, "Mom's in a little pain today, isn't she? I've given her her medicine. She'll be fine soon." When the phone rang, he would always answer it first. He told everyone that I was too weak, that the doctor advised me to talk less, rest more, and not to answer the phone. If someone insisted on speaking to me, he would hand me the phone but stand beside me, listening to every word I said. If I tried to say anything that might arouse suspicion, he would give me a fierce look. I didn't even dare to say help, because I knew he would retaliate against me afterward. He controlled all the medications I took. In addition to the stroke medication prescribed by the doctor, he would give me some medications he called adjunctive therapy, which he said he bought at the pharmacy. I suspect those medications were meant to make me more docile and confused, because after taking them my mind would become muddled and I wouldn't be able to think clearly. Even when he abused me, I didn't even have the strength to scream. Fewer and fewer people came to visit me. At first, he said I couldn't see my friend Nancy because she spoke too loudly and it would affect my blood pressure. Then he said people from church couldn't come either because I couldn't stand crowds. He made excuses for everyone who wanted to visit me until finally no one came at all. We were completely cut off from the outside world. It was just him and me in the house. That home, once full of memories, became my personal hell. I tried to resist in various ways. Sometimes I pretended to be in a lot of pain, hoping he would stop, but he said it was normal for stroke patients to feel pain, and what he was doing would help relieve my pain. Sometimes I tried to cry, hoping to evoke a little pity from him, but he said crying was also a symptom of a neurological problem and would get better gradually. Once, I secretly got hold of the phone, wanting to call for emergency help, but because of the medication he gave me, my speech was slurred, and the person on the other end couldn't understand what I was saying at all. When he found me holding the phone, he flew into a rage. He said if I dared to do that again, he would tie me to the bed and tell everyone that I had lost control of my emotions and acted recklessly after my stroke. Years passed, and I grew increasingly desperate, thinking that no one would ever discover what had happened here. He had successfully cultivated the perfect image of a filial son. Neighbors praised him, saying he was a role model for sacrificing his own life to care for his sick mother. Everyone raved about him when he went out shopping or running errands. Who would doubt someone with such a good reputation? He became increasingly audacious, even staying by my side the entire time he took me to the doctor, preventing the doctor from examining me alone. He said he would be very nervous without him by my side and might have another stroke. The doctors thought this was normal and praised his filial piety. No one suspected that he was doing this to control what I said during consultations. When the doctor asked how I was feeling, he always answered before I could speak, saying I was recovering well, eating well, sleeping well, and doing rehabilitation exercises. If the doctor insisted on speaking directly to me, he would say, "Doctor, she sometimes gets a little confused because of the stroke, but I record her condition every day, so I can explain it to you more clearly." But after nearly 8 years of hellish living, things finally took a turn for the better. That day, Mrs. Johnson next door was sick and resting at home. She should have been at work at that time. That very day, he was assaulting me again. I couldn't take it anymore and screamed for help with all my might until my voice was hoarse. Mrs. Johnson heard my screams through the thin wall. She said she had never heard such desperate cries before, like someone being tortured. Worried, she knocked on the door to check on me. Junior calmly opened the door and said that my pain was caused by paralysis and that he had given me medication, and I was feeling much better. But Mrs. Johnson didn't believe him and insisted on seeing me to make sure I was really all right. He tried to stop her, but she pushed open the door and came in. She saw me lying on the bed, covered in sweat, with handprints on my neck, and my eyes red from crying for so long. She immediately realized something was wrong, especially my desperate look, as if I wanted to say something but couldn't. Mrs. Johnson said she was going to call an ambulance, and I needed to go to the hospital. He tried to convince her it wasn't necessary, saying it was just a normal pain flare-up, and that I often experienced this when I was in pain, but she wouldn't listen and still called 911. While waiting for the ambulance, she sat beside me, holding my hand. I tried to tell her help with my eyes, but I couldn't speak. When I arrived at the hospital, the doctor treating me found it strange. He said I looked extremely stressed, not at all like someone who was well cared for at home. He asked if I had any other pains or if something at home had happened that upset me. As usual, little Junior eagerly answered, saying that people with neurological problems often experience this. But the doctor insisted on examining me alone and told him to leave. He tried to resist, but the doctor was adamant. This was the first time in 8 years that I was alone with someone who could help me. During the doctor's examination, he found many marks on my body that didn't match the attentive care I had received. He asked if someone had hurt me, if I had been abused. I tried to speak, but I was too nervous to speak clearly. So he asked if I could nod to answer yes or no. When he asked if a family member had hurt me, I nodded vigorously. When he asked if it was my son, I confirmed again. The doctor immediately called a social worker and a psychologist from the hospital. They came to talk to me and slowly figured out the truth. I told them everything I could, although my speech was slurred and I was trembling with fear. I told them about the abuse, the touching, the threats. They were shocked, but they believed me. When they confronted Junior, he coldly denied everything. He said I was hallucinating after my stroke, that people with neurological problems easily fabricate stories, and that he was a dutiful son. These accusations were absurd. He said I was ungrateful, that he had sacrificed so much to take care of me. He spoke so convincingly that for a moment I even thought others might believe him. His tone was so certain, so calm, that I almost doubted whether I was telling the truth. But the social worker said they would conduct a more thorough examination, and if they found any signs of abuse, they would call the police. The hospital tests confirmed everything I'd said. The forensic examiner found clear marks on my body, proving I was telling the truth. When they showed the results to Junior, he still denied it, but he could no longer maintain his filial son facade. The mask was torn off, and everyone saw his true, demonic face. The police arrested him on the spot, handcuffed him, and took him away from the hospital. As he was being led away, he shouted that I was insane, that I was delirious after a stroke, and that he would sue everyone for defamation. But no matter how much he shouted, it was useless. The evidence was etched on my body. The marks of years of abuse were undeniable. I stayed in the hospital for almost 2 weeks while they discussed how to settle me. I had no immediate family to care for me, and I was terrified, worried that I would be sent to a nursing home or some unfamiliar place. But then, a miracle I will never forget happened. My cousin Sarah appeared. She was a distant cousin from my father's side. I had almost forgotten she existed. Sarah learned about my situation through a friend who worked at the hospital. She came to see me and said that although we hadn't been in contact for over 20 years, she couldn't just stand by and watch a relative suffer like this. She said she had a room on the first floor of her house where she could take care of me and ensure I wouldn't be left alone. Hearing these words, I cried for the first time because of relief. For so many years, I had cried because of despair, and this was the first time I had cried because of peace. Sarah's family lived in a relatively remote neighborhood in Savannah, on quiet streets lined with trees and simple houses. She tidied up my room, installed handrails in the bathroom, lowered the bed so I could sit up easily, and even prepared a wheelchair so I could move around. For the first time in 8 years, I was in a place where I didn't have to worry about being hurt. The first few days at Sarah's were very difficult. I was terrified. Any sound would make me jump. When she came to help me, I would instinctively back away, thinking I was about to be hurt again. Fear was ingrained in me. Even those who wanted to help me frightened me. Sarah had angelic patience. She spoke softly, moved slowly, and always reminded me before touching me. The first thing she did was take me to see Melissa, a physical therapist at a nearby clinic. Melissa was in her 40s, with short hair, and was firm yet considerate. After Sarah told her about my ordeal, I saw her anger. She said she would do everything she could to help me regain my mobility and independence. The first physical therapy session was difficult. My body was very stiff due to fear and trauma, as if constantly on the defensive. Melissa explained that this was normal. People who have suffered physical abuse often unconsciously contract their bodies, as if constantly on guard against attack. She started with simple breathing and relaxation exercises, teaching me to trust my body again. Melissa was not only my physical therapist, but also my confidant, my friend, and my temporary psychological counselor. During therapy, she would let me talk about everything on my mind, listen patiently, never judge me, and help me understand that none of this was my fault. She said that a stroke was not God's punishment, that I shouldn't have suffered that pain, that I was a survivor, not a victim. After about 3 months of physical therapy, something astonishing happened. During a training session, Melissa placed something on the table for me to reach, and my left hand moved on its own. This was the first time since my stroke, and although it was just a slight twitch of my fingers, I cried with excitement. Melissa cried along with me, saying, "Look, Eleanor, your body is slowly recovering." From that day on, the training became more intense. Melissa said my brain was building new neural connections, and as long as I didn't give up, my movements would gradually return. The process was difficult and painful, but every small step forward gave me more hope. First my fingers could move, then my wrist, then my elbow. My legs gradually started to respond as well. Sarah also took me to see Dr. Harrison, a psychologist specializing in treating severe trauma. She explained that I had 2 traumas to deal with. One was the sudden stroke that completely changed my life. The other was the years of abuse that followed. She said recovery would be a long process, and I needed to be patient with myself. Trauma doesn't heal overnight. Dr. Harrison's treatment was very helpful. She made me understand many things. What Junior did to me had clear names: sexual violence, abuse of the vulnerable, unlawful confinement. This wasn't care, it wasn't love, and it had nothing to do with those beautiful words. He simply exploited my physical dependence to satisfy his own morbid desires. This was a serious crime, regardless of whether he was my son or not. Gradually, I began to understand that none of this was my fault. The stroke wasn't my fault, becoming dependent on others wasn't my fault, and raising a monster son wasn't my fault. Dr. Harrison told me that victims of abuse often feel guilty, but this guilt is false. It's just the brain trying to understand something incomprehensible. Several months into treatment, I experienced the most exciting day of my recovery. Melissa said she would try to get me walking on my own with crutches. I was terrified of falling, but she said, "Trust me, Elarana, you're ready." And I truly was ready. I took 3 shaky but determined steps with my crutches. Sarah watched, tears streaming down her face. Being able to walk on my own completely changed my life. I no longer needed anyone to help me go to the toilet, get a water glass, or look out the window at the street. This might seem insignificant to others, but for someone who had been unable to move normally for years, every movement was a tremendous achievement. I spent hours practicing walking in my room, strengthening my legs and regaining the balance I had lost since my stroke. As I gradually became more independent, I began to think about what I should do in the future. I could no longer go back to work in the textile factory. My body couldn't withstand the long hours hunched over a sewing machine. Dr. Harrison suggested I find a job I enjoyed, one that would restart my career without being too strenuous. Sarah suggested I learn herbalism. She said I'd always been good at gardening, knew how to make tea from various plants since childhood, and my mother had taught me many folk remedies. She said a lady named Carmen in our neighborhood offered a basic herbalism course, which I could take. Maybe I could make a living from it someday. This course became a new discovery for me. I learned the effects of dozens of plants and how to brew tea, make homemade ointments and syrups. My teacher, Miss Carmen, said I had a talent for working with plants and that my hands were perfect for herbal remedies. This was the first time in a long time that someone had praised my abilities, making me feel useful. Just as I was slowly recovering and rebuilding my life, Junior's case was also going on in court. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison for abuse of the vulnerable, unlawful confinement, and torture. I thought justice had finally been served, and he would pay the price for everything he had done to me over the years. But I never imagined that the American prison system was such a joke. What I'm about to do will likely draw criticism from many. When I learned he was released after serving only 3 years for good behavior, I made a decision. Do you think it was wrong of me not to report him again when he tried to contact me after his release? What would you have done? Because what happens next will show you that sometimes justice in life arrives in unexpected ways. 3 years after his release, I had fully recovered and started a new life. I opened a small natural products shop near Forsyth Park in downtown Savannah, selling homemade herbs, teas, ointments, and syrups. Business was booming, and I couldn't manage it all by myself, so I hired Sylvia, a young woman who loved learning about herbs, to help me run the business. My shop became increasingly well-known in town, and people came from far and wide to buy all sorts of remedies: headaches, insomnia, stomach problems, depression, anxiety. I would tell them which plants to use, teach them how to brew tea at home, and offer them natural health advice based on years of experience and learning. I became an expert in this field, earning money honestly with my own hands and regaining my independence. The routine at the shop is pleasant. I get up early, have coffee with Sarah, then walk 4 blocks to downtown to open at 8 a.m. I pack dried herbs into jars, prepare the ointments for the day, and greet my regular customers. They buy remedies and chat about everyday life. Life is simple yet fulfilling and meaningful. Sarah still lives with me. We're more like sisters than a cousin caring for a patient. She helps out at the shop on weekends and takes care of the housework while I'm at work. She's my life partner, my confidant, my closest friend. For the first time in decades, I truly feel happy. I also have a boyfriend, Mr. Anthony. He's 68, a widower, and after his wife passed away, he often comes to my shop to buy lemon balm tea to calm his nerves. He knows my whole story, respects my past, and treats me with a tenderness I've never felt before. We don't live together, but we see each other almost every day, going to the movies together, taking walks in the park, enjoying the beautiful love of mature people. We both know how to cherish each other's company. Anthony has qualities that little Junior never had: respect, thoughtfulness, and protectiveness, yet he doesn't control me. Every Friday, he brings me flowers, helps me move heavy boxes from the shop, and waits for me to close before we go out for dinner at a nearby restaurant. Our relationship is built on mutual respect, trust, and genuine love. This is what love should be like. One Thursday morning last year, I was tidying up the newly made arnica ointment in my shop when I suddenly heard a familiar voice pleading for help. The voice trembled and weakened, completely different from the authoritative voice that had terrified me for 10 years. I turned around and almost fell backward in fright. It was Junior. But he was no longer the strong, domineering abuser. Standing at my shop's door was a disheveled man, thin, with sallow skin, walking unsteadily, leaning on a cane, with sparse, graying hair, sunken eyes, and clothes hanging loosely on his emaciated body. He looked 20 years older in 10 years, and if it weren't for that voice that still sent chills down my spine, I would hardly have recognized him. When he saw me, he started to cry, the kind of sob a cowardly man makes when he's begging for help. He choked out, "Mom, I'm very sick. I need your help. The doctor said I have multiple sclerosis, and if I don't get special care, I'll be paralyzed. Please don't abandon me." He stood trembling at the shop entrance, hoping I would pity him like a foolish, forgiving mother. Looking at this man who had ruined so many years of my life, I felt strangely calm. No anger, no fear, no pity, only a cold, unprecedented calm. His situation was exactly the same as mine had been years ago, dependent on others, vulnerable and helpless, needing care, begging for help from someone he had so cruelly hurt. He kept talking, trying to move me. "Mom, I know I made mistakes before, I know I hurt you, but I really need you now. I have no one else in this world, you are my only family. I live in a small rented room, I can't work, and I can barely take care of myself. Please forgive me, please help me." He was still playing the same emotional manipulation tricks he used to play, but now he has no effect on me at all. Sylvia, who was arranging herbs at the shelf, noticed something was wrong and came over. I whispered to her, "Go have lunch first, I'll handle things here." She tactfully left, leaving just the two of us. I didn't want anyone to hear my conversation with this man who used to be my son. I listened quietly as he finished speaking, looking at his once strong but now frail body. He told me that he had been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis 5 years ago. At first, he only experienced some numbness in his legs, but it gradually worsened, making movement difficult. His hands were no longer under his control, and picking things up, maintaining his balance, and walking long distances had become luxuries. He said he used to work on construction sites, but was laid off due to his health condition. His disability pension was barely enough to cover rent and food, and he couldn't even afford a proper shower. Sometimes he wouldn't have a decent meal for days. He was afraid that if he fell, no one would help him. After he finished speaking, I took a deep breath and said in as firm a tone as possible, "Now you know what it feels like to depend on someone, right? You know what it feels like to be unable to protect yourself, to only trust that the person taking care of you won't hurt you or exploit your weaknesses, right?" I saw his expression change. He knew what I wanted to say. I continued calmly, a calmness that surprised even myself. "Do you remember what you did to me during the 10 years I was paralyzed? Do you remember how you abused me every day, how you threatened me, how you turned my life into hell? Do you remember when I begged you to let me go? You told me to be grateful, to say you were taking care of me?" He tried to interrupt me, but I raised my hand, stopping him from speaking. For so many years, he had told me to shut up. Now it was my turn to speak, and he had to listen. "I've begged you for years, begging you to show me more respect, more humanity, but you said I depended on you, that no one would take care of me like you did, leaving me to silently endure it all, because you said it was a favor you were bestowing upon me. Now it's your turn to depend on others, your turn to need care." I saw his growing despair and realized I wouldn't be swayed by his emotional blackmail as he expected. He changed tactics. "Mom, I was young and naive back then. I didn't know what I was doing. Now I understand. I was wrong. I hurt you. I regret it. I swear to God, I truly regret it." But I'd heard this argument before. He said the same thing during the trial. "You regret it now because you need me, not because you truly understand how much you hurt me. If you were healthy, wealthy, and independent, you would never come to apologize to me. Your regret is selfish, not genuine repentance." I stared directly into his eyes, not looking away for a second. He pulled out his last, most disgusting trick. "Mom, I know you're a good person, you have faith, and you forgive others. You've always been like that, with a kind heart. You wouldn't just stand by and watch your son be abandoned and left to die, would you? What would others think of you if they knew you wouldn't help me?" I laughed, a laugh that surprised even myself. My son died a long time ago. Standing before me is just a stranger who once deeply hurt me, so deeply, so badly. Do you know how people see me now? They think I'm a brave woman who overcame terrible trauma and rebuilt my life after 50. That's what matters most. You leave my shop right now and never come back. You can go to a government-run nursing home or a charity. Find those people who get government salaries and specifically care for people like you who have no family and no money. As for free care, loving care, family care, you lost the right to have those the moment you decided to torture me as a sex object for 10 years. He left the store, leaning on his cane and crying loudly. But I felt no pity. After he left, I locked the store, turned the open sign to closed, and sat on the chair behind the counter, crying for a long time. But those weren't tears of sorrow, they were tears of relief, utter relief. It was as if the burden that had weighed on my shoulders for decades had vanished all at once. Finally, I could look the person who had hurt me in the eye and say no to him. Finally, I reclaimed the power he had taken from me during those 10 years of terror. Later, I learned from an acquaintance who worked in the social services department that he eventually ended up in a public nursing home, the kind the government runs for people with no family or property. I knew he wasn't doing well there. He had to put up with the overworked staff, sometimes had to wait hours for anyone to attend to him. The food was terrible, and he slept in a shared room with other patients. This was exactly what he deserved. Now I'm 72, and I can say without hesitation that I am a complete and happy woman. I have a thriving business and am financially independent. I have Sarah, who is truly family to me. I have Anthony, who loves and respects me in the way every woman deserves. I am healthy, energetic, and have many things I want to do. I also founded an informal support group for women with disabilities, which has helped dozens of people report abuse, escape toxic relationships, and regain their dignity. Every week, I receive messages from women in our group who have successfully escaped terrible situations. This is how I turned pain into motivation and trauma into a life mission. My story proves that no matter your age, no matter how much trauma you've experienced, no matter how many times you've fallen, you can always start over. Most importantly, never give up. Ask for help when you need it, and believe that you deserve a good life, that you deserve respect, care, and kindness. Even more importantly, never let those who hurt you continue to have power in your life. I'm Elarana Bennett, 72, and I live in Savannah. This is my life story. How one of the worst traumas transformed me into the strongest woman I've ever known. If you want to see more stories of overcoming adversity like mine, subscribe to the Grandparents Stories channel. Here, we prove that it's never too late to start, and the sweetest revenge is to live better than those who hurt you. Did you enjoy today's story? I feel like a winner because I overcame all the difficulties with all my might. If you'd like, click the scrolling square on the screen to watch more videos and hear more stories of warrior women like me. You'll be amazed by the strength of us American women. No matter what life throws at us, we overcome it. Life teaches us that we reap what we sow. Those who do evil will one day reap what they sow.